in today's episode, I want to be a little more critical. I want to be able to expand our minds to really reflect in the ways that we are using our media, that we are watching content, and maybe be a bit more self aware about the lack of control that we have, but also the ways in which media can manipulate us, can have an influence on our emotions, and actually steer us more into a negative spiral instead of pushing us forward, especially when it relates to self-development content, to spiritual content. But honestly, this can go way beyond. It's any kind of media. And I also feel like media are usually a reflection of our mind. So it tells us a lot about our internal operational systems and our psychology. So I want to be a little more critical about self-development content, about spiritual content online, and just in general content that makes us think, that shares information and truths that we seek and that we perceive and that we internalize when we navigate these online spaces. So if you're down for that, hi, welcome. How are you doing today? My name is Lynn. If you're new here, I am a student in communication sciences, media studies, technology studies in Brussels. I'm in my master's right now, and I am very, very passionate about the ways in which media influence our society, the ways it has an influence on our psyche, on our cognition, of a way of understanding the world and giving meaning to our surroundings. So if you're down for that, welcome. I really hope you're doing it today. I also have a very spiritual background. I really see the world through a spiritual lens. I see beneath the surface level, and I really feel a lot. Everything is very energetically. So I am very involved in everything that happens to me, and I like to study the things that usually they want to hide from us, or I like to go beyond what they tell us to believe and really question everything. So knowing that that's who I am, knowing that point of view, I want you to understand that that is where I'm coming from in this video. I want to be very transparent in that. And I like to be very self-critical as well, because a lot of people could consider, I could consider my kind of content also spiritual at times, also self-development and, just like self-help in a way. But I just feel like I'm just sharing my experiences and everyone can take from it whatever they want. So anyways, if you're down for that, let's get into the video. I need to stop. Today, I really want to highlight the way that media have an influence on our psychology, the way that it influences our emotions, and that there's a relation between media and our emotional experiences. Media is like a reflection of the mind. If you are familiar with communication media studies, it is well known that media are like an extension of the mind, just like any type of technology is considered by some writers an extension of our senses. Writing scripture has been the first step of that extension, whereas we were able to translate certain parts of our thoughts, but also now with visual television, computers, film, photography, it's a more visual representation of the mind. With AI, we are able to also produce images that maybe we weren't even able to imagine yet. Or it's just like with painting, drawing, it's all just an expression of something that is already inside of us. Music, for example, is such a beautiful reflection of how emotions get translated through a medium, and it has an influence on us. It's not just us that create content, it's not just us that are able to translate our emotions into a medium, but we are also able to have emotional reactions to things that we see in media, to, for example, art, to music, through books. They are able to influence our emotions, and we can live it. We can experience things, we can experience content or just products through the medium that they are delivered to. And I feel like in this day and age where we are right now, we are not aware. I mean, we are aware to a certain extent, but I really want to keep talking about this because I feel that we are still not aware of to which extent we are constantly being swayed emotionally, but also in our opinions, in our thoughts, by the things that we see. Maybe if you're on X, Twitter, right, or on Instagram or on YouTube, we are constantly shown, we are constantly confronted with different opinions, with different people that are sharing their truths. And when we lack a certain awareness of this, we are easily controllable. Like when we do not have this self consciousness of the ways in which external factors are influencing our internal experiences, our emotions, it is way more difficult to keep that inner center, that inner balance, and to not be swayed, to not have emotional reactions based on whatever that is constantly being portrayed to us. So the first point of this argument is that like it's so easy to manipulate us when we are not aware of the ways in which content, opinions are influencing and are affecting our emotions and are making us feel things. It is okay to feel things, and it is not necessarily a bad thing, but it can become dangerous when we're not aware of it. But how that happens, we're going to get to that in a minute. First, I need to deconstruct one more theory. The difference with the media that we consume right now, and for example, in comparison with old media, which would be considered television, radio stations, the first types of media that were introduced, they were more, we didn't have control. They were more top down. People decided for us what we listened to, right? The programs, the movies, at what time they would run. We did not decide what kind of content we watched at what time of day. It was already pre-decided by public broadcasting, for example, in a lot of European cases. So that has really changed with now the internet, with social media, with platforms like YouTube, where we really have control of the media that we see. Well, we kind of do have, we have more control, but we cannot forget that it is always a loop and it's always a two-way street, whereas we have control to a certain point, but there are black boxes of algorithms and ways in which we are steered into certain ways, and sometimes our content are a reflection of certain things that we already think, that we already want to see, that we already looking for. It's like media are becoming a real extension of our thoughts, so to a point where our devices and these algorithms and these platforms already know how we feel before we do. They know exactly how your emotions work based on the things that you are watching, because different kind of content also are a representation of different kind of emotional states. And I know I might lose you at a certain point, but just look at the ways videos on YouTube, for example, are produced. If you are very attracted to videos with a lot of clickbait, with very, captivating titles or thumbnails that are very sensational, you will always attract those kind of things. And you are actually telling your algorithm that you are an emotional being, that you would base your decision on emotions, because it is through these emotional, captivating tactics that you are being lured into these types of content. I know. Does that make sense? And the thing is, what I found interesting is that these days, and this is necessarily portraying through like self-development content and things where we want to better ourselves and like move forward and change routines, or like especially if, for example, something bad happens. And a lot of the times we can look at media and content as a way to deal with those emotions, to find an escape, to overcome difficult situations, find motivation, inspiration, to have inspired action based on certain videos that we see, which can be very inspirational, right? So in that aspect, sometimes we can use content, we can use videos as a way to soothe emotional pain, as a way also to fuel, and this is a dangerous part, sometimes we fuel emotions that make us feel good, even when the prolonged being within a certain state can actually be harmful for us. I'm going to give an example to you, right? To make it a little bit more clear. Imagine something really painful or embarrassing happened, or you're just generally in a state of distress, in a state of a negative spiral in your mind and you're trying to lift yourself up. You're trying to run away from this state and avoid the feelings that you are feeling. We can find a lot of content online that will reflect, that will give you that boost of confidence that you are looking for, that will help you to fuel the feelings that you are trying to invest more in to run away from the opposite feelings. A lot of the times it's ego-based content or things that are, sometimes a little bit based on anger. A lot of the times when we get hurt or when our ego gets bruised, we usually pass through anger before we reach the sadness and before we are eye to eye with our wounded inner child that is actually sad that it didn't feel loved in that specific moment, which is also just a state. But our mind, when we feel feelings, we're not really able to see through them. Sometimes we just need to feel them instead of trying to rationalize. But we are so good at looking for ways to escape our feelings instead of just sitting with them, accepting them, and letting them go. But it's easier said than done. It's a process, man. If you've been here on this channel, you know that we've been learn to accept our emotions, to take them, to embrace them as they are. And the beautiful thing about learning to sit with your emotions is every time I embrace and accept my emotions, I've gotten out of the place with new insights about myself, with new ways of understanding the world, understanding my shadow as well, and learning to integrate that and embrace that and love that. It's like constantly reparenting yourself to be imperfect, to allow yourself to be human, to go through the ups and downs without trying to run away from always being of coming back to the downside of human experience, as we might say it that way. It is just part of life, but I guess I'm a little bit idealistic, especially if you have this perception about yourself that you are not allowed to be imperfect, that you always have to show up and be the best version of yourself, and that you feel like you making mistakes is like detrimental to your value, your worth, your beauty, your success, that are very painful foundations to grow up with. So it is very normal, and it's a difficult and long process to learn to accept yourself through the highs and the lows, and to also be patient and gracious with yourself. But I think that is what life is about, just learning to embrace ourselves and give ourselves the space to just be and love ourselves as we are, even no matter how that looks like on different days and times in life. Yeah. What I find very interesting about this topic is that when it comes to spiritual content, for example, and I'm going to use this as a starting case because I feel like spiritual content and new age spirituality, or just content directed to people that are starting to break free from a matrix, that are daring to think differently, that are questioning everything. Because I feel like when we talk about concepts like spiritual awakening and things like that, it is like for the first time in your life, questioning everything that you thought was true and learning to believe your intuition, learning to listen to your intuition and finding that connection with your inner self, despite whatever the external circumstances are showing you, telling you. It's learning to reconnect with the voice of our inner child and wander and finding new possibilities. Sometimes it feels like finding God. Sometimes it's psilocybin and things like that, which are also very mind expanding. But a lot of the times when you are in the state where for the first time you have the self-consciousness and you're consciously challenging reality with your mind, it is the start of a very emotional roller coaster. It is a start of living life and feeling things in a way. It's actually, you know what? For me, it was finally no longer numbing myself to my senses and really like be open to experience my emotions and everything in life, not running away from reality anymore. Wow, beautiful way to put it. What this does is that for a lot of people, this is a place where emotions can be very heightened. And we also look for external confirmation and external bias for especially if you're breaking free from a certain reality or world where you constantly just thought whatever, believed whatever people around you said, and now you are going against the grain for the first time. Now you are isolated and you're living this individual reality, and you feel like no one understands you and you're just on your own path. And it is very helpful to find online information or like communities where your beliefs are being, confirmed, where you get validated for what you think and what you feel. And I feel like that is what makes spiritual communities online so potent, but also very dangerous, because not everyone is the same as you. And we can sometimes forget that there is also a two-way street process of people's emotions and people's paradigm influencing the way that they make content, and that your way of experiencing your reality, your emotion, is also going to change the way in which you perceive and you receive certain information online. Are you following me right now? Just making sure we're still here. This is flowing, but it is very up there. It is important for us to remember that we attract what we already think. Whatever you already think is what's going to show for you, and that does not mean that that is exactly what that person is saying or that what their intention is. And that is what is so difficult. Is it's really that we can never really control what the sender says. We can never really control the message. But what we do, what we can take control and be aware of, is the ways in which we decode messages, the ways in which certain emotions that we receive through watching certain content, the way that they are a reflection of things going on within us, of our own beliefs, of our own needs, our own desires, but they don't necessarily have to represent the truth. I feel like when we see things and we are so convinced of our emotions and we consume content based on a certain high or a certain emotional state, and we find things that are a reflection of what we feel or that are confirmation of certain emotions, perspectives, is that the danger is that we interpret it as truth or we internalize it as truth. And that's what I found very dangerous, is that yes, we can consume content, and yes, we can make content even, because this goes both ways, whether you are watching content only or you're also a creator. I find it very, very important that we as consumers, as creators, take in the position of remembering and realizing that we are just expressions of certain states, of certain emotions, of certain feelings captured in a moment, but that whatever we say is not the truth. We're always seeing a truth, someone's truth, in a specific moment through a specific emotion. But thinking that that way of being is a plateau and it's the only way that things can be in the future, in the past, or always for that matter, I feel like it can be very dangerous. For some people more than others. For some people, it might just keep you stuck in a certain place of limerence and just like feeling stuck, because for you to feel security, you need to hold on to that certain truth, and you are holding on to a certain emotion a lot of the time when holding on to a truth. When true freedom and sometimes being able to really progress and to really grow, we have to be able to let go. We have to be able to be open to other possibilities being true. Have to be open to reinvite love. And a lot of the times it is negative emotions that are the catalyst. Well, deemed negative, right? I don't really believe in emotions being negative. If they're neutral and we can just embrace them as they are, accept them. But we still do experience some emotions as more negative. And I noticed that a lot of the times online content is consumed and created from a specific place of feeling what we deem negative emotions: discontentment, anger, sadness, And it is especially that what makes it so important that we be critical, because if we do not want to stay in these places, in these paradigms where we're overpowered by these emotions that we deem negative and that we actually want to get out of, holding on to certain ideas, stories, truths, and making those your something that you hold on to actually get out of that place is actually going to keep you more stuck than you realize. But this is so meta, right? If you I really hope that you understand what I'm saying. Everything is a mirror to you. Everything that you feel, everything that you experience, everything that you see, instead of projecting our feelings, like whenever we see something, we can have certain thoughts about the person, about the content. But what I've learned and what has actually helped me to move along in life and to grow and to really feel free and always come back to happiness is taking the responsibility for my feelings and realizing that whatever I am seeing or whatever I am feeling or whatever I'm internalizing is actually showing me something about me. Everything that I experience is telling me more about myself than about other people. The ways I react to external events tells me more about me than about other people. Taking minding your business to a whole new level. Do you get what I mean, fam? So yeah, based on that, I also think it's very important. So yeah, based on that, I just think it's very important for us to remember that there is no truth. There's just people being expressions of a truth. And it can be very negative for ourselves to hold on. Like, things can be inspiration, but don't hold on to them. Have a healthy relationship to content where you can also create a boundary between you and the content. Know where you end and where you start. Like, that is so important. Learn to differentiate what someone is saying or the expression of someone else, the way it makes you feel, but that it is not necessarily you or the truth. I know that's not so easy, but I find it so important that we, for ourselves, realize that we are all part of a world and that we should all be able to freely express our truths. And I feel like what bothers me a lot of the times is that what has bothered me on this journey of creating and expressing my truth, for example, is the fear of people of doing harm, the fear of people misunderstanding, or the fear of ruffling some feathers, or the fear of annoying people. And, I think part of this whole process is learning that you are not really responsible of how you make people feel. Not in the world that I want to create. I really stand for taking accountability, responsibility, and being autonomous and independent in our self-regulation so that we can all evolve together. And I feel like it's always for me about coming back to love and really having a balanced perspective and breaking free from dual thinking. That is really what the foundation and the ideological framework is that I work with. And it is important as human beings, even as we interact in the regular world, to understand that every person has a different ideological framework. Every person has a different way of thinking, of perceiving the world. And sometimes we feel like we don't matter because people disagree with us. But when we are able to detach and differentiate between people's truth and our truth and realize that we're just equally allowed to coexist, but take the truth and take what we need from the experience with people with certain truths, values, expressions, and allowed to have our own, that gives us so much freedom. And that really feels like breaking free in some kind of way. So yeah, I think that was the video. I really hope it made some kind of sense for you. I really hope you got something out of it. Let's stay critical. Let's stay realistic and take good care of yourself and your mental health. And remember to always come back to love, and that we're all just trying to figure our things out. And we are changing. We are ever changing. And I think that is the beauty of it all, is letting go of the truth and accepting a truth and many truths allows us to evolve and change and to grow and to accept many, many versions of ourselves and of the world and of life and of reality, shifting the paradigms. I like that. Okay, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to comment. Let me know what you think, what your thoughts are. Feel free to like and subscribe if you would like to. There's many more where this came from. And yeah, I would really like to know your thoughts and how you experience this, if you agree with it or if you don't. And I will see you next time. Bye.